Hello and welcome to Showtuned, a podcast about musicals and the craft of storytelling through song.
Where each week we explore the layers of ways that songs tell stories, from melodies to harmonies, lyrics to dialogue, characters to scenes, and how it all comes together in this unique medium where songs are the engine of the story. I'm Brett Boles. I'm a professional songwriter, I'm an educator, and the creator of the hit TikTok and Instagram series, The MT, where I've been spilling the tea on why certain musical theater songs make us feel things, and I'm also the founder of the MT Studio, where I help songwriters hone their craft.
And I'm Josh Shelton. I'm a filmmaker and a songwriter and the founder of Counterpoint Musicals, which is a film company making new movie musicals. And this podcast is meant to be more than just a conversation between me and Brett. It is an exploration for anyone who loves musicals. If you're a songwriter or a playwright or a performer or a theater kid or just a super fan, our hope is that you will find something interesting here. And today on the show, we are going to talk about the power of writing lists when songwriting.
Ooh, lists. Isn't writing songs enough? Why do we have to write lists too?
Ooh, good question. There are multiple lists that we can write when we are writing tunes. And when I first started doing this, it opened up a whole new way to find lyrics and rhymes and all sorts of things. I love writing lists.
Yeah, me too. I'm a sucker for a good list.
Yeah. So this episode, we will, create a list of lists that will help us all. And also we will be recording, as usual, bonus content for our paid subscribers on Patreon, where we are going to write a bunch of lists based on a new idea for a new song to show you all how it's done. And it'll be fun to just sort of make a bunch of lists and play around with that. Also, remember on Patreon, you can join for free. We're building a community there. We're sharing all of our content over there, and we'd love for anyone to hop over there. If you also want to be a paid member, that's great too. You get bonus content. But first and foremost, it's about building community. And we're grateful to all of you.
Yes, we are.
And also stick around to the end of the episode because we are sharing what we're listening to. At the end of each episode, we want to share a little bit of the music that we are currently exploring on our own. Could be a musical, could be something else. But we just want to make sure we're providing recommendations from human to human.
But before we get into all of that, we start every episode with a quick intro segment that we like to call What is Your I Want Song for the Week? So, Josh, you're going to go first today. What's your I Want song for this week?
So I'm going to share an I Want that is not just for the week. It's a slightly broader I Want, which is I want a dumb phone. Have you heard of dumb phones?
No.
So a dumb phone is, as you might imagine, the opposite of a smartphone. And I think there's a couple different companies that are making them now where they have sort of the basic things that you might need, like maps. Of course, you can text, but they're pared down. It isn't about all these apps. It isn't about a great screen. So a lot of them are flip phones, but it just boils it down to the necessities of a phone: calling, texting, communication. You can check email, but they're intentionally simplified to help us find a way back to a little bit of peace, a little bit of disconnect from the constant, calling that our phones do to us to check all the different apps and do all the different things. And I have just felt lately a need for that peace. And I think there's a way to balance it. Maybe when I'm working certain hours of the day, use the smartphone. But my wife and I are very much yearning for that kind of, when we're not working, when we don't need all the bells and whistles, how do we simplify?
I love that. My ex-father-in-law used to call it a pizza phone. That's all it's good for is ordering pizza.
Exactly. Yeah. And the idea of a landline sounds great, but that's also, it seems a bridge too far. And also we like calling them, instead of calling them dumb phones, maybe they're smarter phones because of, there's research coming out that the phones maybe aren't doing the best rewiring of our brains, all the sort of various ways that they distract us and stuff. So mine is, I want a dumb phone. And I feel like that could be a great song. I feel like there's a hook in there
Yeah, it
easily.
could be. I like that. Cool. Well, my song for the week, I don't know, maybe it's not a want, maybe it's more of a character establishment song for the week. So I recently brought someone new onto our MT Studio team, and then yesterday I played a master class with Tony winner Jesse Mueller from Waitress and Beautiful, which was a lot of fun. So I had to make like 2 new friends, and so I'm all about making new friends this week. So that's my I want / my I am song.
I love that. I think we have a similar theme of connection. So your I want is celebrating the new connections or the new relationships,
Yeah.
or wanting to proactively make more.
I think celebrating the new ones. I don't know how many more I need, but these 2 have been good, so I'll celebrate those wins.
I've got a new friend in you.
There you go. Boom.
Fantastic. I love that. Great to celebrate the things we have achieved or, brought into our lives. Everyone says gratitude is one of the greatest, superpowers to living a fulfilled and a rich life. So I love that idea of a character establishment or a song that is more in that vein of gratitude and not necessarily that perspective of want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Celebrate connection. That's good.
I love it. Celebrate connection. And strive for disconnection in my case.
Yep.
So let's move on to the main topic for today. Lists.
What do lists do for us?
I first came across lists, I think, reading something about Sondheim. I mean, he was famous for his lists. And I found when we sit down and write out a list, it is one of the best ways to open my mind to possibilities. I think that's the core for me. How do I just broaden my perspective?
Yeah, I think there are things you can discover while making a list that you wouldn't discover if you just started writing, pen to paper or fingers to keyboard in real time. It gives you time to look at the possibilities, to make connections, to learn things and discover things. I think it's a really healthy habit to get into.
Yeah. So to provide some context and make sure everyone understands what we're talking about, there is a way to start songwriting where we are intentionally stepping back from the exact line or all the syllables or the actual lyric and just say, let's make a list of the different word associations or things happening and not get bogged down with here's the first line, here's the second line, or even we talk about song mapping and structure and all this stuff. There's all these other components of songwriting. And this is next to that or kind of before that or taking a step back where we just list out a bunch of different things. I sort of think of them in a couple buckets of like character, emotion, character perspective. We can make a list of hooks. We can make a list of objects in the room, and we can make lists of rhymes. Again, not necessarily how they will end up, but we're just getting the juices flowing.
I find that it is most helpful to start with the 30,000 foot view stuff and then get gradually more and more detail oriented as you focus in and hone in. In fact, yesterday, we're recording this on a Monday. Yesterday was Sunday, and I ran a free songwriting class online over Zoom, and I had about 100 people there. And one of the things that I did with them was I had them drop a whole list of potential scenarios and situations and emotions and whatnot. And from those, we made a list and we narrowed it down to the hook that I wanted us to spend the time on. And so once we did that, I had them come up with, once we had the scenario, we came up with a list of hooks. And then after we came up with a list of hooks, we started thinking about the the content for each verse. So we made a song map essentially. And so we made a list of all the possible things that could be in verse 1 and what the things, in the chorus and what would verse 2 handle. And, within 10, 15 minutes, we had an entire song mapped out that was then ready for the next level of list, which would be, the more minutia oriented things like the lists of things in the rooms or the images we associate with a particular thing, or maybe a list of rhymes and start associating words. But when you start with that 30,000 foot view and you then focus in, I find that to be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. And of course, what we're talking about is a form of brainstorming, right? It is a form of just opening up the ideas and getting lots and lots of ideas on a page. The thing that I like that's a step beyond brainstorming, or maybe brainstorming with intention and pillars, is when we zero in on certain elements, certain types of lists. So talking about that 30,000 foot view, where do you usually start? Do you usually start with character, sort of emotion perspective?
Well, so for me personally, by the time I'm ready to make a list, I kind of, if we're talking about musical theater, I already know what the moment is because we've already sort of, song spotted that out. So I know what kind of emotional state the character is in. So I'm not really questioning that. My first go-to, and it may be different from your process, my go-to is hooks first, because I'm already aware of what the emotional situation calls for at that point.
Yeah, when we were prepping for this, I wrote sort of character, emotion, perspective, and then sort of right after that I was like, is hooks next, or is that the same? Was sort of the question I asked myself. Yeah. And to your point, assuming we've already song spotted and we've said this scene is happening and the character sings a song about this, we've sort of already maybe identified the emotion. But even when I go to find that hook, I'm still looking for a perspective. I'm looking for a way in. So even though we might know that the character is singing about, celebrating connection or wanting to disconnect, based on our I Want songs, it's like, what is the angle? So I might start listing that out. Like, they are feeling overwhelmed. They are feeling, that they've lost control. They are feeling lonely. They are feeling that, like, and I start to list that out. And then from there, I might quickly find a phrase or something that becomes the hook.
Yeah. My brain a lot of times will go to metaphor. And so I find that it's really helpful to make a list of metaphors that can illustrate where a character is and what they want to say in that moment, because a metaphor can be a really poignant way of delivering a message in a show don't tell kind of a way. So making a list of those kinds of things I also find to be really helpful.
I absolutely love that, because the metaphor does a couple things. One, metaphors are more likely to become great hooks because they're that one step removed from the exact literal thing that is happening. And you can find fun words in metaphors, right?
Yeah. I was just reminded me yesterday when we were doing this masterclass, one of the kids brought in a song from Big Fish called "I Don't Need a Roof." Talk about a metaphor. I mean, that song is a beautiful metaphor. I mean, what is if you don't know the show, at that point, her husband is terminally ill and he's not going to be living much longer. And she is singing this song to him. He's a guy who's always been sort of larger than life. And so she tells him in that moment, look, all I need is you. All I need is you. I don't need a roof to know I'm home. I don't need a roof to know I'm covered. I don't need a roof. I need you. And what a great metaphor to use for a situation like that. And when she could so easily have just said something that was much more like, I don't know, less creative. But to use a metaphor like that, and those are the kinds of things that lists can really help with.
Right. Because that list is taking you on this, intellectual, down this intellectual road, this road in your head of finding the metaphor and one thing connecting to another. And by listing it out, it also gives me the freedom to move on and not get hung up on one. Because if I'm saying I need to make a list of 10 metaphors, then I'm going to force myself to write 10 out, as opposed to maybe getting to the second or third and be like, that's probably good enough. Let me go start playing around with music. It's like, just try to write out 10, because you might be somewhere totally different by the 10th that is completely new and then becomes revelatory. Or you might get to that 10th one and go like, yeah, the third one was the best.
Yep. Yeah. It's worth going on the journey.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about list for hooks or metaphors or writing that out?
I know we've talked about the song in other episodes, but defying gravity, like what a great metaphor that is.
Using that as an example, it's like maybe they got to defying gravity quickly. Maybe that came from the book. I doubt it.
I don't think so.
But this idea of like taking off, lifting, rising. This is how I would start to list it out. I'm like, she needs to fly. I need to fly. I don't want to be held down. I don't want to be, stuck on the ground. This is what we mean by a list. It's like, how do we get, don't want gravity, can't be held back. I like, just how do we write that list out? And then maybe you say, yeah, gravity is holding me down. Gravity always wins. She wants to go against gravity. But I just want to give an example of list it out, right? Follow that train of thought. Let that train out of the station.
Good metaphor.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Let that train out of the station. Exactly. And then maybe even by writing out a list of metaphors, you find a unique phrase. I think that's the one other thing with metaphors is that there are certain metaphors that we're all familiar with that become phrases, the train leaving the station. But just by thinking metaphorically and through those other connections, that you can find unique phrases that become truly your own.
Yeah. Oh, over the rainbow.
Exactly. And then it becomes its own thing.
Right.
Once you have a hook, that's obviously, as we've talked about plenty of times, the core angle for writing any song. But then the other list that I really love diving into is just what is around them in the room. What is going on in the scene, and really writing it out just to put yourself there. Like, literally, where are they? What is around them? A desk, a chair.
Yeah, I love that. And it brings to mind, as a writer, thinking about what your characters are doing on stage when they're singing. Even if it ends up being something totally different, a director can always come in and have a brilliant idea that changes everything. But there's also another Sondheim story that brings me back to when he wrote Maria for West Side Story, wrote the lyrics to Maria for West Side Story. And Jerry Robbins asked him, well, what's Tony doing on stage when he's singing this? And Steve didn't really have an answer for that. And Jerry got really irritated with him. He was like, what do you expect me to do with this? You have no idea what he's doing on stage. So Steve said that was the last time that he ever wrote a song without thinking about very specifically what a character would be doing on stage. So if any director or any choreographer ever asked him, he would at least have an idea before going into it. So yes, I think making a list of that stuff is extremely helpful and help make you craft the song in a way that the character can have business to do while they're, or maybe they'll relate to things that are around them or whatever. And it can inspire lyrics too.
Absolutely. And I also think it's just helpful when we're writing a song that is set in a scene. It gets us out of our own heads, and instead of making purely metaphorical or abstract connections, we can write lyrics based on where the character is. To take Maria, for example, right? Like, he's standing there, he's in the street, there could be the moon is there. There could be a street lamp. There could be, rain. There could be, people walking by. There could be just kind of listing out all these things, which also then can lead kind of into, in that situation, what is he thinking about? He wants to see her again. He doesn't notice anything else because he's only thinking about her. He could accidentally step in front of a car. He could be doing, there's any number of ways when you start to list it out. What is around this character physically, emotionally, you start to find a way in.
Yeah, it was funny. Yesterday, Jesse was talking about the process of putting Waitress together, and that is a show with a lot of props. They're in a kitchen much of the time, and so there's, as she said, it became a running joke among the cast that they would call it Props the Musical behind behind the scenes. And but you think about, so much of that stuff is physical, is like making a pie, baking a pie, getting the ingredients, doing the thing. And she mentioned that there was a note that was a little high for her, and she was having trouble placing it right. And so she would actually use the table to, she worked it into her staging and her choreography, that she would use the table to put pressure against, to vocally help her get to that note. And so there's all these things physically that go on in a show with a character. And sometimes an actor can even be helpful in helping you find those kinds of things. So it's very cool.
That's very cool, and that's very interesting. And Waitress, I love that score so much. Sarah Bareilles did an incredible job. And you're right, there is such a visceralness to it. I mean, that first song is, sugar, butter, flour. Mm-hmm. It is so much putting you in the space where she is baking with these physical things. And that's a great example of, I don't know what Sarah Bareilles' process is, but she clearly puts you in there. And if you're writing a song like that, listing out, well, what is a baker actually looking at? What is around them? What are they doing? It's a great way to find a way into a tune.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to note about making a list, especially one of the surroundings of the character, is that when talking about the hook, I said something like, you make a list of 10 and then you realize maybe number 3 is what you want, or number 10 is the best one. What I love about making a list of just everything around a character is that actually just becomes a whole bag of ways to go when you get to writing the actual lyric. You aren't trying to find a definitive one. It's more just a whole sort of palette of colors and things that they could interact with.
Yeah, I like that.
We referenced this in something else we talked about. I forget what it was. It might have been bonus content. Was the song Losing My Mind. That idea of like the coffee cup, I think about you. The sun comes out, I think about you. That's another one of those ones where it's very much what is around the character is informing the song. And that's the most literal version of it. But I also think there's ways to make a list of what could this character be thinking of that can inform an evolution from verse 1 to verse 2 to the bridge and so on. And you even mentioned this, making a list of the sorts of associations we have with the idea.
Yeah. And I think also as a writer, it helps to think like an actor too. So, what is going to get me from thought A to thought B? Do I see a letter on the refrigerator that reminds me of something, and then that leads me to my next thought? Or do I see, an old sandwich on the counter that, that hasn't been eaten, and that leads me to my next thought? Or what, these kinds of things can be very informative for an actor, but also as a writer. You want to be thinking of those things because it can help connect thoughts.
Yeah, actually, speaking of that, the other thing that actors do, right, is they are acting and reacting to the other character in the scene. And I find it also helpful to make a list maybe of what this character is thinking when they aren't speaking. If it's a duet or if there's confrontation in it, right, start to think, what is a list of what they are thinking when the other character is singing, or what is their reaction to someone else or whomever they're trying to communicate with. Just making a list of like, what are they trying to get out of the person? What are they trying to do? Where could their brain go? And again, just list it out. They could try to convince them. They could try to manipulate them. They could get angry. They could get, sweet. They could try to seduce them. There's like all these different things that are within a verse or within a moment, not necessarily the whole tune, but just the ways we can go. Yeah, thinking like an actor. I like that. Like or thinking like the character. How are they acting and reacting? And sometimes that could be something physical, like a coffee cup or a sandwich or a sign, but sometimes it could be something emotional or character-based or an expression. I had a song where that was very confrontational, where in the one person's response to the other, I made a list of stuff they could be kind of arguing about, or ways they could interpret what the other person is trying to do. And I came to this thing where she responds to the look on his face. It's a lyric that says like, don't give me that look. Right. Mm-hmm. But then the other person responds with like, well, a look is worth, 1,000 words or whatever like that. But it came from a list that I made that was, what could they be responding to that is not spoken, that is specifically not spoken?
Yeah, that's great. And, that leads me to another thought, which I do all the time. And I would encourage writers not to be afraid to do this, especially if you're alone at home, is to do these verbally, like, react verbally, play with things out loud. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a medium that we are supposed to be hearing with our ears. Nobody's reading a lyric when they're listening to a song on stage. So I'm here constantly doing that. And I feel like if anybody walks by and looks in, they probably think I'm nuts. But it's become a regular part of my practice. I do things out loud all the time.
Absolutely. Doing things out loud can be so helpful. And you hear things differently when you hear yourself say them out loud. Absolutely. So the other type of list that I also find to be one of the most fun, and it's sometimes hard not to jump straight to it, is listing out potential rhymes. Again, intentionally removing yourself from, this is the first line of the first verse, this is the rhyming word, what is an exact phrase that rhymes with that word? We're not there yet. We are literally just writing rhymes out. And maybe you have a phrase that is related. I had this song that was about exercising, and I just started writing exercise type words. Like it's sung by a trainer who's like trying to, get someone to go. And I wrote out some interesting words, oh gosh, what was the word I was thinking of? I can't think of it now, so I'll go somewhere else with it. But just write out what is a word within this world? In this case, it was exercise. So then it was what are just words that rhyme with exercise? That's a complicated one, but which can also be fun. Exercise, down a size. I don't know. I guess that works. Move your thighs. Don't roll your eyes, right? Just listing out things that I don't know where they're going to land in the song or if they'll get there at all, but I'm just kind of having fun with a rhyme, within the world of the song.
Yeah. If I'm doing that, unless it's a hook that I know is not going to be rhyming, I will go to my rhyming dictionary, which I always keep close by, except for tonight. I went to look for it, and I don't know where it is right now at the moment, but whatever. But I'll go there, and I'll find my hook word and start looking down my vertical list of all the rhymes with that, and then I will start making a list of all the potential ones that I like that I feel like could fit in that specific scene, and that usually is a springboard to other thoughts.
I love that, and I love that we just gave two totally different examples. And starting with that hook word is such a great way to start, right? Because then, and using the help of a rhyming dictionary, that will make sure you can really have tons of options to land that most important phrase and that important rhyme. And then on the other end where I was going was, let's come up with the example I gave was exercise. So that's more of a unique rhyme that you're not going to use that a lot, probably, but you're going to know the ones that land and have fun with how that rhymes. And I also the rhyming dictionary I find to be super helpful, but I also find there is a way that my mind opens up when I don't go to it at certain times, so I can just sort of be free to associate and see what words come up with my own on my own. And then sometimes I'll cross check that with the rhyming dictionary, just so that I'm kind of getting a sense of where I would go naturally and kind of where else I would go.
In my mind, there's so many words, and I'm almost always first, this is my process, and this does not mean this works for everybody, but I will usually have, aside from the hook, I will usually have some phrase or some thing that pops into my head that the character would want to say, and that becomes the catalyst for the words that I'm then looking up in my dictionary, which then sometimes will lead me to other thoughts. Oh no, actually I like this better, or oh wait, maybe that goes here. But it's always an outside idea that's then leading me into my dictionary rather than going to because I could open it up to a random page, I guess, but for me, I need to have an idea of what's going to be said so that then I can focus on that and not have to worry about choice paralysis, where the whole world is my oyster. What do I do?
Absolutely. And like you said, whether it's a hook where the word you want to rhyme, or if you have kind of the first verse or the first phrase or a second phrase and you're trying to find the word that lands with that. The other thing I wanted to say about, a list of rhymes is I find it fun to just play with those multi-syllable words, which is what I just did with exercise, because that isn't always as obvious in a rhyming dictionary. I'm intentionally looking for sort of a couple words that work together to create a rhyme, or even if you have something like a phrase like, I don't know, spin it. I don't know that that's a good thing to rhyme with, but you can start coming up with different phrases that wouldn't necessarily be in the rhyming dictionary. Begin it, thin wit. That's actually kind of an interesting pairing of words that I wouldn't necessarily find somewhere else. I mean, I guess you could find wit, but to tell someone they have thin wit, I don't know. Is that a phrase?
Sure. Well, it could be now. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I also, the rhyming dictionary that I like does give you a lot of those kinds of things and mosaic rhymes and all that stuff. Which is a mosaic rhyme, by the way, is a rhyme where you have a one-syllable word like minute, and then you rhyme it with something like spin it or begin it, which is 2 words. So we call that a mosaic rhyme.
Perfect. Thank you. I had heard that phrase, but I couldn't. It wasn't coming to me at the time. A mosaic rhyme. I love that. Mosaic rhyme. That's a great phrase. Just
it is
in and of itself.
Yeah, I love that term.
So I think that's just sort of a general overview and reminder to all of us and to anyone listening, the power of writing a list. And I found it really transformative when I just take the time to write it out and be diligent about it. And it really opens up so many new doors.
Yeah. Force yourself to do it because it really does make a difference.
Yeah. And another list that I actually like to make sometimes is a list of songs that are references or similar to what I'm trying to achieve. Some people like finding references, some don't, but I like sometimes finding references. And I'm using that right now as a transition into our end segment, which is, what are you listening to this week? So, Brett, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to go first. I've been listening to Maybe Happy Ending, which is still running on Broadway as of this recording anyway. I've listened to it before, but we were playing it in the car the other day, and boy, I just love that score. I really, really love that score. The sort of American songbook style music that's in it, and then you also have this just sort of very contemporary sort of musical theater and some like pop elements in the score too, and very, very intentional prosodic choices made throughout in terms of how the melody is supporting the lyric and vice versa. It's just a really smart score. But it's also very heartfelt and touching, and it does all the right things. So I've been enjoying that.
Maybe Happy Ending is a incredible show. I have returned to that score multiple times and always happy for the reminder to give it another listen.
I love it. What have you been listening to?
So, my recommendation this week is a little unique, a little more maybe philosophical, you could say.
Ooh.
I've been listening to the radio station KCSB, which is our local college radio station. My wife and I have been doing this, and it is amazing. Just listening to different DJs play their different sets. A lot of them are, college aged folks. So they're talking, with this incredible sort of insight and perspective on the world that has a freshness, but also an awareness, and just been discovering new music or random music or old music because it's the college radio station. So my recommendation is next time you're in the car, give your local college radio station a shot. Listen to it. And if you don't have a college in your town, try KCSB, our local one here in Santa Barbara.
There you go. Well, I love that. That's great. Thanks for that.
Yeah. And I think there's a theme in both of my ones. A dumb phone, the radio. I'm certainly feeling a sense of wanting a little disconnect in space from...
Clearly.
Yeah, from a lot of the digital world.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there's a theme. There's a theme going on over here, but it's just been refreshing to also get in the car and not look at my phone or not choose what to listen to, and just let the radio play. And so it's been great. So that's what I've been listening to. Local
awesome.
College radio station.
Love it.
Great. Well, that's the show for today. A list of lists and also some listening recommendations. So thanks again for joining us. As always, feel free to hop over to Patreon. You can join as a free member, paid subscribers. We're making bonus content. Today, we're actually going to, as I mentioned, write the lists for a potential song. Not sure what that song will be yet. Maybe it'll be one of our I Want songs, maybe something else. But yeah, just thanks again for listening and for the support.
And of course, as always, if you have a sister, brother, spouse, friend's mother's cousin's uncle who loves musicals, please feel free to share. We always want to be expanding our community and spreading the joy of music and theater to anyone who wants to listen.
Absolutely. So thanks again. This has been Showtuned, a podcast about musicals and the craft of storytelling through song. Have a great day.